I know, I know.
And then make sure your sound's muted on the Zoom.
It is.
Good. And then you're gonna go back to your Zoom. You got it?
Yep.
And then you're just gonna want to make sure you put your panelist up there.
Three days ago.
There you go. We have no attendees at this time.
Okay, thank you so much.
And it just helps me if you say who's new logging on so I can get there.
Okay, do you want me to say names now? Anyone new? Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes, okay. I have to shut my door because I can hear myself echoing. I'll be right back.
That's the microphone right there. I don't need it. Yeah.
There you are. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the August 6th edition of the Clark County Area Vocational School Joint Operating Committee meeting. I would invite you this time to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, observe a moment's silent meditation with me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and
to
to
the
the
republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
For all.
Thank you. It's hard to do when you don't know where to follow. Yes. As we noticed, there's about a 3-second delay from the last. Like a round. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, like a hard build. Anyway, roll call please, Mrs. Lorenzo.
Mr. Conrad,
Here.
Ms. Daniels Wells,
Here.
Mr. Gebhardt, Mr. Holly,
Here.
Mr. Harrison, Mr. Marburger,
Here. Can't find the mute button.
Mrs. Miller,
I saw her name 5 up.
She's here.
Mr. Nickel,
Present.
Dr. Roscoe,
Present.
Mr. Peterson,
Here,
Mrs. Scott,
Here.
Mr. Zeitz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benson. We have the hearing of public. I understand that Kelly Weber and Pam Dixon would like to talk. Are they online?
They're here. I'm putting them into being able to speak right now. If they would like to comment. We did speak yesterday, but they may still want to comment
Okay.
or speak. Kelly Weber, if you, there she is.
Yeah.
She unmuted herself.
Yeah, we're here. But we don't have any, I mean, I know we talked yesterday and we don't have any questions right now, but we figured we just jump on because we did email those questions over.
Okay,
And we
thank you.
spoke yesterday.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Dr. Heiler, do you have a report for us this evening?
I do. So my director's report, my very first director's report. I just want to thank everybody so much for being here and making sure everyone could hear me, correct? Because I hear, okay, Mr. Spiker, I missed him already, but he last time told me I was too quiet, so I'm trying to speak loudly and clearly. So first of all, welcome everybody. In the director's report, my first item is Mr. Ryan to introduce Bennington Ford, but Bennington Ford, who are our student of the year, was not able to make it this evening. I do want to share though that the JOC and our solicitor did donate $1,272. And thank you so much for that. This young man was thrilled. He had no idea he was going to win anything at all. He was just thrilled with the win of being student of the year. And also thank yous, formal thank yous have been sent. So thank you so very much. This young man's HVAC Butler student, wonderful student. Mr. Ryan, I know I'm putting you on the spot. Is there anything you'd like to share about Bennington that you may know as being a former teacher? I know you were just a teacher and you spent some time in HVAC.
Very, sorry. He
You're
was
fine.
a very deserving student, very polite young man, always appreciative of any help that anyone was able to give him. And, you know, a fine representation of a student that we hope to produce here.
Thank you so much. I have to move someone else in. Mr. Zeitz, I'm putting him into the panelist mode right now. Mrs. Lemenza, if you heard me.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'd like to express some of the bright spots during this time. Updates to the agenda, Exhibit 4, Exhibit 5, Exhibit 8, 16, which is our Appendix I of our reopening health and safety plan, Exhibit 21, 24, 25, and 26. Director's newsletters, which was sent through email to JOC on July 24th. That was Exhibit 1. Our enrollment report, if you see, we have 956 students who have enrolled at this time to our school for 2021 school year. That's a great number. Conferences for Exhibit 3. Media Exhibit 4, we were in the paper. The new addition there was that we enacted our safety protocol. That's the second exhibit or second part of that exhibit. And also the Butler Road Tech holding drive-through commencement ceremony. It was a wonderful experience. The kids had a great time. They were excited to see their teachers. Correspondence received. We had a nice thank you note from grandparents of one of our auto tech students and graphic design student, Seneca Valley, Mars students, and just all around thankful to our school for what we do. And our awards program was on the 29th and 30th. We have so many great photos that could be viewed on our social media sites. We did an excellent background and students were just thrilled and we were socially distanced. And that was the day before, that was on June 29th and 30th, the day before the universal mask order came out. We were outside most of the time anyway, but we were smart that day. We had an online auction through Municipid. It was held in July. We made about $10,000. Various items, they were all approved on the June. Summer building details, just to share with you. Auto Tech, we had two Auto Tech areas. We have always had one Auto Tech program, but two areas. And everything was moved to one area. And the other area, which was a larger area than welding is now going to be in the Auto Tech, one of the Auto Tech rooms. And the great part about, or Auto Tech labs, I apologize. The great thing about it is now welding, the theory room and the lab are connected. Before they were separated, which was a little bit difficult. And also the room set up so nicely, the teachers coming in the summer and helping the maintenance staff to help get things set up and running. And I just want to compliment also too, our maintenance and our custodians and our summer staff are working there behinds off, and I'm very happy and thankful. Just really doing a great job here, getting ready for the school year, and throwing on top of everything COVID-19. I can ask for better people to really take things seriously and still come to work and do their best. And I'm making kind of light of what they did. It's a lot. It's a ton. We applied for the school safety and security grant, and 2 hours ago, I got an email that we will be awarded $91,000. I just got that email. So that was excellent to get. You'll see a letter of support for West Ed and study partners for, it's a research project that possibly will take place in March of 2021. Dr. White shared this with me, and I've worked with West Ed in my former position at my former school. And it's a research group. It's trying to it's expressing the interest of sharing the power of career and tech ed. So it's all positive things. And who knows if we would be able to do it, but I figured what a good opportunity for our students to be portrayed. It'd be anonymous, but portraying, I believe it's 5 VOTECs across the state, and we were chosen as one. So, well, Dr. White was chosen, Butler was chosen, and he said, I have a VOTEC across the parking lot. I think this would be awesome. So that's where we did that. The updated 2021 school calendar, the big, in Exhibit 8, the big, not change, but one of the changes in talking with the pandemic team and talking with Mr. Ryan, the new principal, and just different people, we decided that we were going to move 2 of the in-service days at the beginning of the year. So we have 4 in-service days to get the teachers ready for the year instead of just 2. And now, of course, that's not enough time, but they've been doing some work on their own in the summer. So, and then we decided to start our date, and with your approval, September 1st instead of August 26th. And that is because we are trying to conform and work with what the sending schools are doing so that we don't have to worry about getting the kids here with busing and if busing isn't in session. So that's why we did that. That's why you'll see a new calendar. And our next JOC meeting is September 3rd at 7 p.m. And I'm hoping to see everybody in person. We'll see what happens. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tyler. At this point in time, as
Mr. Peterson, I apologize. Mr. Peterson has his hand up.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure how you want us to indicate that we have a thought or a question. So I just put my hand up.
that works.
Thank you. Dr. Heiler, go back to the safety grant, the $90,000. You said we received $91,000.
Yes.
2 things. One, could you give us a little bit of fill in as to how you expect to expend those dollars? And also in the text of the material you sent us, it said that if there is extra dollars, if there are extra dollars, there might be an opportunity to fully fund or overfund some of the recipients. Do we have any sort of a plan if they say they have money left over that we can jump in quickly and perhaps try to secure additional funding?
At this point, since I just got that email, I haven't even looked into that. However, how we will be using the funding is for cleaning and sanitizing products, training and professional development on preparing for the school year. We have thermometers, foggers, the touchless thermometers, so new technology, GoPros, swiveling tripods. I mean, I really don't even have to look. We've been talking about this constantly. Possibly mental health services for students, because we know that this has been very difficult. We have so many things that we have already planned to purchase, and we already have. However, now we're thinking of even going a little bit further. Well, now I'm thinking because I just got that email. So I have not thought about if there's additional funds, how to get those yet, because I'm not there yet. But I will jump on that first thing tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there another hand?
I had a question.
Yes, Anita has a question as well.
All right.
Go ahead, Anita, lady first.
Thank you. So in Exhibit 2, I'm just going through the numbers. Is Kern City really coming in 2 different sessions? I thought historically they were in 1, but in this document, they're in 1 and 3.
Did you catch
They
that?
are in one. Honestly, that must be a mistake.
Okay,
Every once in a while, we may have a student that they have a packed schedule and they, they contact the school and see if it could work. That must be a mistake. So we could get you an updated one. So thank you for catching that.
Dr. Harler, if I may, this exhibit, because our student database is not rolled over yet with the new students, this was done by hand by our secretary over guidance, so she did the best she could with the application she had on her desk. So a proper update we need for September for you. This might not be accurate.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hatter, the $91,000 that we're getting, is that separate from what the press release that was just let out by Governor Wolf's $10.5 million that he's now also attributing to career and technical schools?
I did not hear you. I apologize. I didn't hear
I
you.
got some information from Dr. White earlier this afternoon that Governor Wolf said that he has set aside $10.5 million of the CARES Act money for career and technical education. That was just put out today. Am I to assume that is separate from the 91,000, or is that awarding all the different applications for funding for?
As I read it, it's awarding the applications. As I first read it, I said, oh my, there's more money. Then I looked into it and I said, wait a second, that's our award.
Okay, so all the different centers and so forth was what the email you received for 91,000. That's what's totaling the 10.5.
That's how I'm reading it.
Okay. So,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. And at this point in time, I'd like to recognize Dr. Vitale as a superintendent of records coming back once again. So we're back together again. I guess, and for some of the JOC members, it's their first time with you. But welcome back.
Thank you. I'm excited, and in spite of a pandemic, I always have excellent timing, but I recognize many faces here, and I'm excited to be back with this group. I know you're a very committed group, and I think those of you that know me know that I'm very committed to vocational education. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
What was it the last time you came in the middle of an emergency as well?
Yeah, that's why I say my timing is impeccable.
I don't know if everybody was intentional.
But you know what? After being through 2 teacher strikes, pandemic.
Well, thank you and welcome. All righty. With that, may I please have a motion and a second to approve Mr. Halley and oh, that's right. Sorry.
Mrs. Lamenza and also Mr. Conrad, I do apologize.
Yes.
Since this is new to me, I do have to permit Ms. McDonald. She's an attendee. I have to put her in as a panelist. I do apologize.
Okay.
Let me put her in right now. I do apologize. Here we go.
Mrs. Who?
Who's that again?
Jill McDonald.
Jill McDonald.
Is she an alternate?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so then,
I'm an alternate from South Butler School District.
okay, yeah, that's what I have you had. I have you in here.
Thank
as
you.
that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome, Jill. Okay, was that, okay, we had a first, I was still waiting for a second. I believe the group. Sorry,
Jim Nichols.
Jim Nickel, okay, thank you, sorry. Trying to keep my head on a swivel looking at all the individual pictures for a hand. Okay, sorry. Anyway, all in favor say aye, please. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. And now we have before us the meeting minutes as shown in Exhibit 9 of June 11th. May I please have a motion and a second to approve those meeting minutes?
So moved.
Okay, so moved. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Peterson. And if you would be so kind, whenever you indicate a first or a second motion, if you actually voice it rather than just raising your hand, I would so much appreciate it. Thank you. That was very thoughtful. Okay, may I please have a second? Okay, Mr. Halley, second. And are there any further discussion questions with respect to the meeting minutes of June the 11th? All right, all in favor say aye, please. Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. So now we have before us the new business agendas. We have the field trip request as shown in Exhibit 10. We have the student parent handbook as shown in Exhibit 11. A bunch of pages of that one. We have the occupational advisory committee minutes shown in Exhibit 12. We have the adult education program, basically adhering to health and safety guidelines and plan. We have the MOU for the technical assistance program as shown in Exhibit 13. We have the MOU with Sunnyview as shown in Exhibit 14. We have the approval of the 2021 school position shown in Exhibit 15. We have the health and safety reopening plan as shown in Exhibit 16. Is this the item that Mr. Nickel, that you wanted separated out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be, pretty healthy discussion. I thought it might make sense to just have that be a separate item and a separate motion and second.
Okay. Okay, so we're excluding number 8, and we'll make that a separate motion later. And then we have the auction items for approval. And then we also have the job descriptions as shown in Exhibit 17. We have the internal control review as shown in Exhibit 18. We have the auditor approval as shown in Exhibit 19 for a 3-year term. We have the 2021 certificate requirements as shown in Exhibit 20. We have the bid awards as shown in Exhibit 21. We also have the agreement for the school police in Exhibit 22. And then we have the educational memberships as shown below with PACTA, with ACTE, the PA Principals Association. And we also have the resolution for the emergency temporary provisions. Did you want to wrap that into the other item as well, Mr. Nickel?
I think it probably makes sense.
Okay, so we'll take out items 8 and 17 and make that a separate motion. Okay, if I may please have a first and a second to approve all those items except 8 and 17.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Mr. Nickel, and a second, please.
I'll second, Jen.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Is there any further discussion or questions with regarding those items? Oh, I'm sorry, no. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the occupational advisory committees. First, in culinary arts, I noticed there's only 4. I think there might have been 8 total, a couple of instructors and a student. And that's a pretty robust program for us. And I'm wondering why there's only 4 people on the occupational advisory committee. And if I remember right, they come from 2 different providers. It would seem to me that we would want a bigger base of input for that group. And as I was thinking about it, I'm not totally familiar with the entire mission, but Giant Eagle is obviously a huge presence, and they're very community oriented, and they've gone far beyond just pulling cans of soup off the shelf. Now I know our Giant Eagle in Cranberry has a hot food counter, and they prepare cold foods, and there's a sushi bar, and there's a bakery. And I'm just wondering if there's a reason why that group is so small, and if we want to expand it, how can we do that? Let me just ask my second question, because it's similar. Protective Services had a fairly small roster, and I don't think there were any females. There was one name that was a little androgynous. It could have been a female. But I would think there's a lot of opportunities, occupational opportunities, particularly in paramedicine for young women now. And I would offer, if we don't have any other options, to petition the Cranberry Ambulance to see if they'd be interested in having a female paramedic come and join the Occupational Advisory Committee. Then my third question, I guess, it might be to Ms. Davis. The buys, the purchases that were suggested, seems to me add up to an awful lot of money. And I'm just curious if all those become approved budget items. It's hard for me to believe they do. And if they don't, what's the process that decides what gets purchased and what doesn't? So 3 questions, if I could ask you to discuss that.
I'll start because you started with the, you brought up the OAC committee. So I'll explain what the OAC committee is, Occupational Advisory Committee. Everything in Career Tech Ed is committee driven. Part of something that we do here in all the VOTECs across the state, every single program has an Occupational Advisory Committee with industry experts who help steer what is being taught here in the school. Obviously, we have guidelines through the Department of Education in the Bureau of Career and Tech Ed. However, just to be more in line with what is needed in our surrounding area, in our community, we have people come in twice a year and they sit in on meetings and they discuss this curriculum, equipment, supplies, opportunities. So it's very important that we do have active committees. And I will tell you, sometimes they don't all show up. And something that I will say is, in culinary arts, Mrs. Collins and Mr. Barzak have been very creative to try to get as many people as possible, where, you know, they're running it at night in the evenings. That's 3 nights with our programs, 3 different nights in a row. So then they don't have their OAC at night. They'll have theirs during the day. They'll have theirs on usually a Monday, because that's usually a good day for restaurants. Usually if someone has a day off. They have tried to actually have one at Cisco in Harmony. And that was still not super populated. The only issue is the OAC does have to approve the actual facility. So that's something that we've tried different things. Now we videotape and they could come back in the second part of the year to see the facility. But either way, it's just better to be here to see what's going on. But they've tried everything, different times, afternoon, in the morning. And sometimes it's just a simple phone call. Well, they'll say, what happened? And someone's like, legitimately forgot. I got busy. So that is part of it. They do their best to get people in. So, and partnering with Giant Eagle is a great idea. There's so much opportunity there. So thank you for that. And then as for protective services, we do have a female medevac or a paramedic who does come in. She's very strong. If something happened to me, I'd be very happy for her to take care of me. She's tough. They're all tough. They're all decisive. Anyone that all come in protective services, very logical thinking. But we do have, I believe 2 females who are on the committee. Now, sometimes you don't see all of their names whenever they're approved, but other times they get approved later on, then they say, you know, I can't make it. But another thing is with protective services, we do have a female substitute teacher in there too. And the kids, it's neat because the kids get to see 2 different type of people, you know, a male and a female. And then the women do feel empowered, like I could do this. So that's my answer for that. I hope that helped a little.
Regina, could I make another suggestion maybe for the culinary? Because, you know, obviously Butler has an outsourced food service. That's another, you know, part of the career aspect for that. I can't imagine it would be too hard for our supervisor of our purveyor to make a meeting across the parking lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. And then I think there was a question there for Mrs. Davis.
Mr. Peterson, I just want to be sure I understand your question. You're referring to the items purchased for the safety with the grant. Is that correct? Those purchases?
No, that's, as I read through the occupational, I lost the phrase, the occupational committees, each one has a suggested buy, a series of items or services to purchase. And as I just kept reading that, those numbers kept adding up in my brain and adding up in my brain and adding up. And I can't imagine we can purchase all of those recommended items. I guess what I'm asking you is what's the decision process from the information that comes out of those meetings to the actual purchase? How are those decisions made?
Dr. Heiler would probably be best to answer that question in terms of the OAC.
Thank you so much. I misunderstood you also. So they are to do the 1, 2, and 3 year plan. And basically, as soon as that information is given to administration, we then partner with our program development coordinator, who's, I call her the queen of grants because that's a big part of her job. And we get so many things through the Perkins grant, through the supplemental equipment grant, from the equipment grant. And that's 2 different ones, supplemental and the regular equipment grant. And we've been finding, we had a grant workshop here this past, I forget exactly, it was this school year. We found some really good resources. So we actually are trying for a grant right now through, it starts with an A. It's a place in Cranberry. So we're expanding our pool of grant opportunities. So that is a lot of times, sometimes it's right in the budget. Sometimes it's, yes, that is, or, that's sometimes what we actually plan to purchase with equipment money or, whatever is there. However, grants that's where we go to first. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all. Okay, so, Mr. Howell?
I have some questions, Rebecca, regarding the approval for number 12, the auditor, as well as the recommendation. I always ask if we look to possibly get, opportunities with other auditors to come in. Did we send it out, or are we just putting forth a 3-year extension from this attorney? So that would be question 1.
So the auditor, what we did was, I'm sorry?
Did we seek pricing from other auditors or look at that opportunity? I thought that's something that we were going to do before we renewed.
Yes, so we completed the RFP process for auditing services. And in doing so, we advertised in multiple newspapers, multiple weeks. We also put it on our website. I received 2 RFPs, one of which was Mark Turnley, the other RFP received. We looked at various items to be able to make a recommendation to you, the JOC, one of which was, of course, cost. I can confirm that the other firm that put in an RFP was approximately twice as much as Mark Turnley. So then we kind of did a matrix to see, well, even if the cost is far greater with that company, what could be the other benefits of going with a different company? And in reviewing the different proposals, we felt that the Mark Turnley proposal, he had a greater amount of experience. The one proposal had about 15 years of experience. Mark Turnley's proposal showed that it's over 70 years combined experience. His proposal also showed that he is currently working with approximately 34 other districts, 6 VOTECs and CTCs, several consortiums. The second proposal that we received, they do not work currently with any vocational schools, and there are 4 other government entities that they currently work with, as well as about 15 years of experience. So in just reviewing, years of experience, as well as experience for a VOTEC, as well as cost, and just comparing the 2, we felt that it was the best recommendation to continue on with Mark Turnley as our auditor.
I would just like to ask in the future when we do that, I'd love for that to come before the board. And one of the reasons why I brought that forward that I think is beneficial, when I first brought that forward, I used the IU as an example. A lot of times, a lot of school directors don't understand what's contained in an audit, let alone whenever you're looking at the RFP process. So just a metaphor example of what you use. A lot of the firms will put forth, we have so many years of experience doing school districts. And what we found is when you actually bring them before you, a lot of times the person who's actually sitting down and doing the work isn't necessarily the guy who has 30 years experience. It's the young guy who's come to the firm. And so by bringing that before the board to make a decision, the IU and also even at Butler, we found that we were able to get more services, a greater understanding of a board of what we're asking for, which gave us more information of the right questions to ask regarding the audit and what we were looking for. as well as ensuring that the people who were actually performing the audit were the ones that really had the experience. It gave a process for the board to have an understanding of what we're really looking for as an outcome of the audit, other than just what I think a lot of times happens is school directors get a half-inch thick bunch of information about financial things they never really read, and they read one part of the letter and say, okay, it's a good audit. And I think I'd love to see a more precise, a better opportunity for the board to be more involved in understanding what the audit is supposed to find and so forth. And I think that process is the way of doing it. So I'm not saying that we don't approve Mr. Charlie with what your recommendation is, but that's why I wanted to bring that process forward. And if there's other ways that we can help educate school directors on the audit and what it's meant to do, and possibly making sure that the services that are being performed are what we actually want to be performed, it's not just a general process, I think would be a good idea.
Sure, and regarding the years of experience, I can understand that. His proposal didn't specifically say for one auditor, it said combined experience of that. And actually part of what he does in compliance with Sarbanes-Oxley is that he rotates a lead auditor, a reviewing auditor, and an audit team for each of the clients every several years, just to get a fresh set of eyes on the audit itself. So of course, that's a combined years of service. And regarding the audit, that's part of why we like to provide the audited financials in advance of the meeting so that you can look through it. If you have questions, by all means, we strongly recommend that you do review it, you do ask questions, and that's also why we bring the auditor to the meeting so that he can also answer any questions you may have. But if it's a request for the board to become more involved with the audit in terms of reviewing the audited financials and better understanding them, I welcome that as a business manager here.
And the second question regarding the cost for him to perform the review.
Yes.
Do you feel those hours that he's saying are sufficient? Do you agree with his recommendation as far as 50 hours at that cost?
I have never personally been involved in an internal control review, so I would trust his recommendation of the 30 to 50 approximate hours. And also within that proposal, he did state that if it would be in excess of the 50 hours that he would come back to the JOC. So I would just trust the hours that he's putting out there with the understanding that if the hours and the amount are greater than what is proposed, he has said that he will come back to you as a board.
So then we're really approving about $5,000 for that internal review.
He said that it would be approximately 30 to 50 hours. And if you look at the proposal of 3,800, essentially what he did is take the average of 40 hours and that's his proposal. So between 30 and 50, the 3,800 is based off a calculation of 40 hours.
Yeah, I'm looking real quick. I just want to make sure that it just gave that feeling so that it's up to $5,000 so that we know that it's, minutes wise, record wise, it does have to come back.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I didn't see exactly how it was worded. Just to make sure that we're saying that it's up to 50 or up to 5,000, whatever the 50 hours times the amount would be.
Yes, on Exhibit 18 of the proposal, the very bottom paragraph says, on behalf of Mark Turnley, it says, although I do not foresee the number of hours required to exceed 50, in the event additional such time is necessary to properly complete the assessment, I would first request authorization from management before proceeding. That's Exhibit 18, first page, bottom.
But I guess what I'm asking for is that we make that part of the motion, that it's going to be up to the 50 hours. I just doubt, as that goes forward, everybody's going to go back to his, proposal and read that in detail.
So you would like to amend the motion to reflect a maximum of 50 hours?
Right, at whatever that cost is, whatever that dollar amount.
But isn't it, if we're looking at it says as outlined in the exhibit, and
yeah,
the exhibit includes that cap and the requirement. I don't know that we need to be more specific in the motion, Bill.
That's why I was looking for out the board and what number is it.
Well, doesn't he, and Rebecca, you correct me, you're saying that if he's going to go beyond 50 hours, he will seek approval from the JOC. So if it's in there, Bill, and it's outlined that way, and we're referencing Exhibit 18, candidly, I just don't see any need to be more overt than that.
The only reason I'm asking for it, Jim, is again, the public and so forth, they don't see that detail. They'll see the minutes. So I'm just asking that they understand that it's up to $5,000 for the cost.
Perhaps I'm a little confused, but the way it's worded, I thought it was $3,800 for 30 to 50 hours of effort. So if it takes 30 hours or it takes 50 hours, it's still $3,800. Is that correct?
No, the language says accordingly, the approximate cost, and in parentheses, it says average would be 3,800. So he's saying the approximate cost using an average hours, the average being 40, at 40 hours at $95 per hour, that's where you get the $3,800.
That's why I'm asking that we actually approve an actual dollar. So if he's saying the maximum is going to be 5,000, then I'd like it to say in the motion that it's a maximum of 5,000, not that we're approving a changeable figure.
In other words, Mr. Halley wants to pre-authorize management to authorize additional funds if necessary.
Right. But that way the public knows if the ceiling, if we spend 30,000 or 3,800, that's great, but yeah. But that way, you know, publicly as a matter of record, easy read in the minutes, we know it's a maximum of $5,000. It's up to obviously you, Regina, to monitor what he's doing, you can approve on that amount. If it was to go over that, then you're going to come back to the board. That way in a minute it shows what that maximum expenditure.
So it sounds like what we need would be a first and second to approve Mr. Halley's addition, and then we would vote on the addition, then we could vote on the motion itself.
So I make a motion that we alter the motion to read up to a maximum of the 50 hours times the 95, whatever that number is.
Okay. And is there a second? No second.
That's all that.
So I guess the motion fails for lack of a second. Correct. Okay. Moving on then to any further discussion regarding those items? Mr. Peterson.
Rebecca, what did Mr. Turley charge us? What was the actual cost for this year's audit? Do you have that yet?
For the completed 1920 audit,
Yes, ma'am.
Turnley did not increase his rates. So the rates that he proposed at $6,350 remains for his proposal for the 2021 school year. So it's that $6,350. So no increase from the 1920 school year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Nickel,
Yes.
Ms. Daniels Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad,
Yes.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Dr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Marburger,
You're still mute.
We got to work on helping you with that mute button, Gordon. I mean, come on.
thumb up, thumb up,
We can't hear you, Gordon.
thumb up or thumb down?
Just either nod your head, maybe. There
Okay.
we go.
Mr. Seitz,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Scott.
Yes.
Thank
Miller-
you.
You forgot Mrs. Miller.
Oh, this is
Miller is a yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. And
No.
Mr. Gilford.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's here.
and then,
I didn't know that she was there.
okay, then we still need a vote from Mrs.
Mrs.
McDonald.
McDonald,
She's there.
I think,
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald, okay, thank you.
thank you.
Mhm.
Motion passes. Now, That was painful. Anyway, going back to picking up item 8, the health and safety reopening plan as shown in Exhibit 17. And item 17, which is the resolution for temporary emergency provisions as shown in Exhibit 23. Now, Mr. Nichol indicated that I'd like to have some further discussion regarding those items. So I'll let you lead off, Mr. Nichol.
Do we, was there a motion and a second for those, John?
Oh, I'm sorry. May I please have a motion in a second? Thank you.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Mr. Peterson. Okay. Oh, Mr. Nichol and Mr. Peterson. Okay. Now we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I've read through it. It's detailed. You know, Regina, if you wouldn't mind just sort of, I'd like just sort of some color commentary, some overview. I mean, I've highlighted or made some notes on a few points, but I just wanted to have you talk through with us, you know, maybe just sort of the genesis of the plan, your comfort level, those sorts of things. Just, you know, just sort of freewheeling, I suppose. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but I just kind of want to hear what's on your mind and how you came to this plan.
Okay, I'm trying to share my screen. Give me 1 second. I have everything up, but
Down on the bottom, halfway over.
yeah, I'm clicking on that, but for some reason it's not bringing. It's not
It's on their way to rescue you. Oh.
as usual.
Regina, I think you're going to click a button and unmute Gordon. I think that's what's going to happen.
Ah. Just my documents not showing. I don't know why. Here she comes. The savior. Okay. It's up here. See right here? Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to share it. Right there, share screen, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And where? Isn't that weird?
There's your appendices.
Mm-hmm.
Is it saved on this computer?
No, not yet.
That might be why. You see it?
There it is. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, so can everybody see? Yes, because I've shared screen before and it's been frozen. I'm not going to go through word for word. I obviously will be here for a week, but just to give you a little background to go through this, this is the template and this is the plan that every school across the Commonwealth got to have their phased school reopening health and safety plan. And I added some things into here, but just to show you how to start, as Mr. Nichol, you just asked me, what we did was we decided that we were going to have a total reopen if that's what we're able to do in the green phase. I'm trying to stay away from the green, yellow, and red, but my mind's going there. Total reopen is what we chose here. And then we had to choose before that, though, a pandemic coordinator, and team. And we had to put all of us into different categories, whether you were in the development or you were the response team or both. So obviously is the pandemic coordinator, and then Mr. Ryan is in here, our principal assistant director, Mr. Morton, support services assistant principal, Rebecca Davis, business manager, Ashley Lamenza, administrative assistant, Judy Frederick, school nurse. And then I asked 3 teachers if they would come in. Andrea Sellender, one of our instructors, health assistant, Mr. Barzak, culinary instructor, Mr. Collins, he is an HVAC instructor, and actually his son, we need a student too, and his son was able to give some input. Mrs. Burke, our program development coordinator, Ms. Chakrin, technology coordinator, and our guidance secretary. Also on here is Mr. Colonello, our maintenance supervisor. I don't know why I didn't put him up here. And also our custodial supervisor, who is Mr. Schweiner Gruber. So our big first meeting, and actually we had Miss Green too, who is one of our trusted bookkeeper. She's been in the school forever, for a long time. She's just wonderful. She knows so many things. So we had one big meeting to start and socially distanced. We started I started explaining what this plan was all about and my concerns and what we had to start doing, and just brainstormed. And it was very good to do that, because what I learned was some ideas that I had that the administration had, the teachers right away said, I don't know if that's going to work. Here's what we're thinking. And just putting us all together in that meeting, it was just great. Before we even did that, Mrs. Lemons and I walked around the school. We measured the tables. We made sure that there was room for social distancing and all that. And then we come to find that if you have masks on, or if you put plexiglass in between, you're good according to the DOH, but not the CDC. So there's so many different things that we did to start, but the conversations were great. So then we met again. We kept developing. The school nurse kept going to trainings, which she went through a free trainings through Johns Hopkins University for contact tracing. And I believe Dr. Vitale said her school nurse did the same, one of her school nurses. So just constantly communicating and seeing what can we do to keep these kids safe and make the teachers and the whole staff feel comfortable to be around each other. This is broken down into different phases. So there's the yellow phase, the green phase, and then red obviously is a moot point. So we didn't put anything in there for red. We do have an online learning plan we'll share though. So basically the first part is the cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, ventilation. So we always have done these things, but doing them at a higher level. We have a touch point cleaning procedure. We did get some foggers, misters that we're going to be utilizing in the evening. And also each evening with our custodial staff, our cleaner it's called 3M quad cleaner. It is EPA approved. So every single class will have amount of spray bottles. It's the kind of cleaner you could spray and it sits, and after and it could be wiped in, but if you spray it and it sits, it does the disinfecting. So in sitting for about 10 minutes. We are in the process of hopefully getting another custodial staff during the day to help us with the touch point cleaning. We have procedures we are starting to we have in our minds, but we need to put on paper for support staff. They're going to help us with making sure that the high touch points are wiped down in between each session. There's a lot, or as the kids get into their programs, we are changing the entrances and exits, not changing. We're limiting some of the entrances to 3 big entrances instead of, we have one area where there's 3 or 4 pretty busy areas where kids could come in, and we're making them come in one entrance because that's even, so we could help with the traffic so that they're not running into each other. Now in the programs, they have outside doors, they can walk right in. Obviously they'll do that. They're not going to traipse through the school to go in and out, but we're trying to just alleviate some of those constant running into each other.
Regina, if I could stop you just for a second on that part when you're talking about cleaning, what about like a lot of the shared equipment?
Yes.
How do we mitigate against sort of 8, 9, 10, 20 kids all using the same pieces of equipment?
Well, and we do, I mean, I know you're aware of this. We do have a lot of things here, a lot of equipment, but obviously not everybody has their own tool set. So with speaking to the teachers, and actually they did have, the teachers had OAC meetings during the shutdown, and during, March, April, May, they still had to, the Department of Education said you have to, so they did. And they talked to, when speaking to their industry partners, they've implemented lots of additional cleaning procedures for their workers, for their employees. And what our teachers learned, not a lot, but what we always do is the students have to clean and they have to sanitize, and they have to make sure that their area is straightened up. Now, instead of straightening up, they'll be cleaning off their tools, and they'll be putting them in a certain place. And we have foremans in the programs, which are the students that'll help get that process smoothed out. Now, is it exactly what it, how do I want to say this? We'd have to hire probably 30 more people to sanitize the tools themselves without having the students help. And we're not saying, students, this is all new, you've never done this. They have cleaned, they have put things away, but now it's just another layer. So I believe if we share with the students, this is industry standard now. This is something you're going to have to do in the world of work. This is something that will be a practice that we'll continue on with. So that's how our students are very responsible to begin with. So just getting them in that mode of, you're going to be cleaning that. You're going to be making sure you put that back, you use that this class, you don't share, you make sure that you are using your own equipment that you are assigned in tools. So I hope that helps a little. The frustrating thing about all this, which there's more than one thing, everything we strive for with cooperative learning, working as a group, teamwork, making decisions and reasoning things out. I feel like we're going just a little bit backwards in education, where we're kind of saying, do it on your own. And you know what? You can't work with someone next to you. That's not the case. We just have to be careful. I hope that helps a little with that one.
Well, I mean, yeah, it helps. I mean, I don't know across program, but the students typically wear either sort of safety work gloves or gloves of any sort. I mean, and I don't know if that's a solution, but to the extent, a student comes in, they put on a fresh pair of gloves and piece of equipment going from student to student to student to student, and then at the end, they take off the gloves and they either throw them away, or if they're like sort of carpentry, higher cost work gloves, and maybe they sit there for 24 hours. Just curious whether that's something that is a common practice, or is it something that could be put into practice?
Well, in all honesty, in some of the programs, those would be that wouldn't be PPE. It would actually be a safety hindrance. It might make it a little bit more dangerous for the students for having something else on their hands. And actually, Mr. Ryan, I'm going to ask for your opinion on some of this, because you are in and out of the program so often.
Yes, just as Dr. Heiler said, in some of our programs, it would be more of a safety risk for the students to have gloves on. With some of the turning equipment and things like that, it could pull their hand in and they would have no way to release from it. In some of the programs, like an automotive tech or heavy equipment program, it is more commonplace now for technicians to wear, some type of rubber glove or latex glove. So that would be something that those programs could look at to help with, keeping that personal touch off of the tools, and especially with the sharing of tools in those programs as well. So that would be certainly something we could look into for those programs, but just not something that's safety applicable in every program.
And back to, so Regina, you'd suggested, are students going to be cleaning tools every time they use them? Is it sort of wiping them down with?
There'll be sorry, go ahead.
No, are they wiping down with sanitary wipes? Is it alcohol? Is it?
The tool, it would be we have Clorox and Lysol wipes at the moment. Getting more may be an issue. So our quat cleaner, which is the EPA approved cleaner that's disinfectant, that's something that could be used also, that will be used. And it's not like if they're using tools that session, they're using those tools that session. They're not going to be putting them back and, sharing them with someone else. They're not going to have time to continue to clean and put back and clean and put back. Those will be their tools that session. And the teachers, and I've talked about this, it's going to be difficult they won't get anything done if they're constantly cleaning and putting away and grabbing new. Now, if someone needs something, then it's going to have to be, wait a second, we have to make sure this is sanitized properly, because that's how we're going to have to do it. And the kids, I believe, will be good with that. It'll just be a practice that we have to put in.
Well, I'll just be candid. I have a lingering concern about that. Are we, other than when the students come in day one, are we sending anything out, either some, materials or some like video, talking about some of the safety precautions that we're requiring of them?
We're sending out our health safety, the daily health checklist for them before they leave their house to do. I'll show that to you at the end. That's an appendix. We are actually in the process of creating a video to how to get onto our online learning system, and to create, and also to share some of our safety material. We don't have a video for that, but we do have some material to share in that way. And they don't come in and get this information right let me back up. We send out a welcome letter after the JOC approves in August our handbook and everything that make sure everything's great and good. Then next week we send out a welcome packet that has, you're in this program, here's the session, just some things about the school, how to get onto our online learning system, how to get into our student information system, different things like that. However, the last thing is that what we do is, or not the last thing, this year, we're sending out a whole bunch of other things that have to do with COVID. Now, every year our instructors go through weeks of safety before the students even touch a machine or a piece of equipment. This year, it's going to be a little bit different. They're going to be doing some more safety training. Also, whenever we start the year with our in-service days, our 4 in-service days, something the teachers are going to be practicing and putting together is them actually teaching about safety and them talking about how to be safe in the classroom with COVID and going over the handbook. So that is something that we will have on video. We could push out to the students before school started. I didn't even think of that, but that is something that it's a little bit different this year. So you made me think of, or you got me thinking about that. So thank you. I know that's a lot, but that's a good idea. Why not have it before they come in?
Anything we can do to set the table for them to make the job of the instructors a little easier as the students come in and they're getting into some of that safety training as it relates to COVID-19 and just being sanitary, hand washing.
Yeah, that's great. And we will have posters. I'm jumping around now. We have posters. We have, like I said, some of the doorways will say this is not an entrance. This is an exit. We have a few of those posters about washing hands. I mean, I know there's a lot of things I've seen they do in elementary. We won't be doing things like that, but some signage is very helpful, I believe. So just and constant reminders: wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Our teachers, and in our soap, it's called I always forget microbial soap. So there's that extra layer of cleaning in there. So there's so many things that we already do, but in being clean is so important, but we will continue to push it. So those are all good questions.
Okay, and I apologize, I kind of hijacked your presentation a little bit.
That's okay.
But when we talk about hand washing, one thing I did note, there was, I think, a reference to adding hand washing troughs. Is that sort of program by program? Is that in hallways? I just was curious. I thought it was a great idea. I just wanted to see what that was.
Whenever we walked around and assessed what each program had, like we've decided some programs needed a place to have a hand washing area. Some we felt, that's too far. We need another one over here. And also too, the extra hand sanitizing stations too. We had enough, but we felt we needed some more.
Okay. All right, thanks. Continue on.
Okay. We kind of jumped into the next part about the social distancing and safety protocols. And going through here, something that I talked about the signage, something that we are going to be doing, obviously, and I looked at some of the other plans, something I didn't mention. I looked at all the other plans in the county, obviously, and really the superintendents have been just amazing where in the meetings, they're willing to share anything. And it's so nice to see that they're all similar in some ways. So just taking some of those thoughts and using them for my own, thank you, it's great to be able to put it all together for what works with us because we're different than everyone else. So something that I saw was that, what some of the schools were doing is having no visitors at all. So we're not having visitors per se, but if someone has to drop something off, they would have to get their temperature taken. I'm saying a parent, they don't have to come all the way in. They'd stay in our little bird cage area. So something, and we have those infrared thermometers that we did get in, and that is something we have in place that we will be doing. Now, if we go into the yellow phase, our plan is to have the students get their temperatures taken as they enter the school. And I'll talk about the yellow phase in a minute, if we'd get there. This is all things that we've been talking about. And the next part is monitoring student and staff health. And this is where the school nurse came into great help here with everybody. We talked about the daily self-health checklist, which I will show you is at the end. And then we do have a nurse's station, but we have a room right now, which was our welding theory room. That'll be an extra room if somebody would happen to check some of the items on the daily self-help checklist or have a temperature. If they get to 100, that is whenever an actual oral temperature will be taken and the student would have to leave the school. So we will go from there. Something that we keep being asked is, now if somebody gets it, what's going to happen if someone in the school gets it? And everything I've seen, it says refer to the Department of Health and they will guide you through that process. Obviously, we're going to have to confidentially let students and staff know in our school community know what happened, but I'm being very careful with my answer there because quite frankly, it seems that that has changed a couple times too. So that's what we would do there. Contact the Department of Health and go on from there. This next part is other considerations for students and staff. And this is protecting students and staff at higher risk for severe illnesses. So we talked about we are going to offer an online learning program. And it's going to be if the students need to learn that way. And what I mean is, we don't want students to miss an opportunity to gain career technical education. However, it is going to be it's going to be much different. When I say much different, they're not going to be able to do the practical part. And some of the industry, I would say most of the industry approved certifications won't be able to be actually completed properly or at all because of not being in person. And that's something we can't control, but we can still offer them the best opportunity we can. So what we're doing is, no matter if we're in the green, yellow, or red phase, wherever we are in the green phase, teachers will film themselves teaching, record themselves teaching, and they will actually upload that film in that record of themselves teaching to Canvas, which is our online learning system, before the end of the day. So before they leave for the school day, that information will be in there. And there will be assignments coordinated through that'll be for all the students through Canvas. So it's not just going to be for the online students, it'll be for all the students. Now, we think that'll help if a child is exposed and they're out for a couple weeks, instead of saying, you know what, sorry, see when you get back, you know what, jump into Canvas. You need to try to keep up if you're able, keep up the best you can and come back and get right back into it, because we feel that there's going to be some absences and we're trying to be positive, but we know those are facts there. We are saying that students and staff have to wear face masks or face shields. However, we just note in the universal order of wearing the shields that in section 3, if there's a reason why someone cannot wear a mask, when I say someone, I mean the students, then we have to try to figure out how to counsel that student to wear a mask or to have them in a separate location so that other people aren't exposed to what they may have. And that's something that we're working on too. I'm hearing different items about that where, you have to wear a mask. I feel our students are going to be so excited to be back, they're going to put on a mask. But again, we'll deal with that case by case.
Regina?
Yes.
If I can break in there, I'm very concerned about that, the last two things that you covered. Right now, there's been discussion about our board, I'm assuming on the other boards as well. The idea that the governor and the Secretary of Health wants to require documented evidence whether or not somebody has a mental health or physical health disability before they can't wear a mask. That's just not lawful, So I'm concerned that we're going to go to any type of a level to what you just explained. I think if we have a student that does not want to wear a mask, I think we should be very careful, and I'd be very uncomfortable having any type of a press towards that student about that. And secondly, I'm very uncomfortable that we would simply place into the hands of the Department of Health of what's going to happen with our school, as well as with what they have reported they're going to do. So I have not only great concerns for the student first, but then great concern for the VOTEC, but then you have the school districts with the type of contact tracing and how far our Secretary of Health and Governor want to take that. And I think that is going to be a deep, deep hole that we want to go into. So I'm very uncomfortable just having that type of statement that we're going to advocate what's going to happen from there to our Secretary of Health. I just don't think that would be wise, especially with what I mentioned at first, that they're already trying to institute something that is illegal. So very uncomfortable with that. I'd have a hard time approving something to that degree.
Hey, Bill, this is, well, obviously it's Jim. I mean, I'm not, the first part about masks, I'm not sure I understand your point. I mean, is it that you have an uncomfortability requiring a mask? I'm not sure where, I couldn't quite get a sense of what you're talking about there.
Yes, well, I have great discomfort. I have no problem with a recommendation for students to wear a mask. I have great discomfort with trying to make it a mandatory process that would end up having a student be brought anywhere impressed with the reason on why they're not. So, I don't want to read into what Regina was saying, but when she's saying that they're going to talk to that student trying to convince them to wear a mask, I don't think that's our role. And I think any student that comes to the door lawfully, if they're not wearing a mask and they've made that choice for themselves and their family, that's a lawful choice. And for us to try and make it mandatory, I know the governor wants to do that, but there's some very shaky legal ground there. Obviously, there's lawsuits that are in play on multiple levels that involve education and other things that aren't education. So I'm very comfortable making that type of a play.
Well, I mean, Bill, that'll be an area where you and I have to agree to disagree. I think that I don't see an issue, and that's Tom there? I can't quite tell, but I don't know. I don't have a problem because we're the organization we are making it a requirement. I mean, if there's a physical limitation or a mental health issue that we need to address for a student, I mean, I understand that, but and it's just one person's opinion. You're not just making a choice for you or your family. To the extent that that choice affects others, that's where I have the issue. And so I'm fully supportive of a requirement for a mask unless there's either a physical or mental health reason not to. Tom, could you weigh in and just give some thought on that?
Sure. And as Dr. Heiler was speaking on that, I paused to double check because as I understood, and as I'm reading what's in the plan, is all students will be required to wear face covers during the school year, except to those requirements. Exceptions to those requirements are listed in Section 3 of the Universal Face Cover Order, which is Appendix F. And Appendix F, and this is consistent with my understanding, Appendix F indicates the wearing of a face mask, and it talks about entering businesses, and it specifically indicates whether the individuals who cannot wear a mask due to medical conditions, including children under the age of 2 per CDC guidelines, are permitted to enter the premises and are not required to provide documentation of such medical condition. And it references the order. That's always been my understanding in the discussions I've had with other districts, if a student or a parent is, if a student comes in and says, I'm not wearing a mask, according to Appendix F, which is the reference here, and I haven't gotten through the whole section of it unless it says something different for school districts, I question the authority of the school district to say, what is your medical condition? Because if I go into a business and don't wear a mask, that business is not permitted to say to me, hey, put your mask on, or you have a medical condition, and justify it. What we've talked about with other clients of ours is that if the student has a medical condition that prevents them, or a psychiatric condition that prevents them from wearing a mask, is it an eligibility issue for a 504 plan under the Americans with Disabilities Act? And we're encouraging our districts to approach it in that manner, to say, parents, if your son or daughter have an issue that limits their ability or prohibits them from wearing a mask, please notify us in advance of the start of the school year so that we can put a reasonable accommodations in and look for alternative needs of either a face shield or some alternative method to accommodate that student's condition, while at the same time making sure that other students that are in proximity to that student aren't being unknowingly exposed to COVID-19 or other dangers.
And Jim, from that standpoint, obviously, I think you're aware that I provide counsel to youth and families for different means. And I can't be more frank that I advise my clients, and I think there's quite a number of other professional counselors that have made the same type of approach, that if any of my clients would be approached in a manner to be forcibly made to wear a mask or to have that type of a presentation understood, that would be a lawsuit waiting to happen. And the danger is there are multiple mental health conditions that are going to present that opportunity to a student. So I want to be very careful with that. And just as kind of a means of the metaphor, the organization I operate, we have a governmental contract to do fingerprinting. It's a governmental contract from state through federal. And when all this transpired, they tried to put down that type of a forcible mandate. And make a long story short, we challenged that, and the legal counsel of each found that it was accurate. We're not even asking anybody. So if somebody comes to my door, understanding that I have that type of governmental contract without a mask, we have signage for people that may be concerned that is our policy, that we're going to consider if they have a condition that doesn't require them to have a mask. And we don't approach them with anything about that. There's precautions taken. So that would be my recommendation, because I think that's what at this point has been proven legally. And I think if we take any other approach to try and, especially talking about minors, about forcibly wearing a mask, that would be a great concern.
Mr. Halley, if I may weigh in,
Sure.
What our solicitor was talking about, I think what we have to keep in mind, this has been very confusing for the public because the rules for businesses are different than schools. And and again, all the confusion stems with, what do you mean I can't have more than 25% in a restaurant, or I can't have more than 50%, whatever, but yet we're going to fill schools here in a few weeks. So I think we have to keep in mind that while it says you don't have to provide documentation, it clearly states that your medical exception has to be documented in what the solicitor pointed out as a 504 plan or an IEP. I can't write those without documentation. And so while I suspect that the Secretary of Health, did not want to overwhelm our doctor's offices by us asking, we do have the right to say to a parent, help me to understand, and to have those conversations now before school begins. And we do have the right to require it in our plan. Now, do any educators want to turn kids away? No, we can't wait to get them back. So how we handle this, you're right, is of the utmost importance, and we need to be respectful. But you can't just walk in and say you're not going to wear one. That's not what the order says. It says if you have a medical exception, we document it in a 504 or IEP plan. And those need to be done before school begins. We're all racing to try to get those done. So the way our solicitor explained, and I think is the approach, the prudent approach, so that we're not discussing this when kids walk in, we're discussing it now, that we're requiring masks unless you have a medical exception. And if you do, please notify us now so we can begin the paperwork for the 504 and the IEP. We may not, it's unclear whether we can require a doctor's slip, but we do have to document what the disability is. So we do need to know what that is, or we can't write the 504 or the IEP. So I understand your concern, Mr. Halley, but I would I would advocate that schools are different than businesses, as indicated in all of the guidance, which is totally a dichotomy for what we're seeing in the community, which is also causing confusion when we hear 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. But when it comes down to social distancing in schools, we're told when feasible.
Well, and believe me, I respect your opinion and I thank you for that, but with what you just said about the order itself, I think that's what's going to be legally tested. But I understand what you just explained. I understand the governor and the secretary of health position. I just think that's going to be tested legally, even what you just said. In no other way do we have students having to document a 504 plan in any other capacity. So what we do is leave it there. I mean, so I think we're getting into some weeds in the schools, and I think it's going to be tested legally pretty quickly, depending on especially how we proceed.
I would also like to add, we do need to keep in mind that, these aren't rules that schools want to implement for the most part. We have been on a 2 o'clock call every Monday with an infectious disease doctor, Dr. Love from Butler Health System, and Dr. Hellier, the emergency room doctor from UPMC Cranberry. And then we've consulted other doctors. Butler Health System has offered to review all of our school plans. They're going through them now. All of those doctors are adamant about mask for the teachers, that they're not as concerned, although you don't want to say not as concerned because this is a very serious virus, but they know the transmission is somewhat low on kids and the symptoms we're not seeing quite like we are on the adults. Although we are starting to see more on teenagers, they want kids in mask, and they are telling us they need to be in mask to protect our teachers. So if you don't require this, I understand, where people are divided on this issue, especially considering at the beginning of the epidemic, we were all told not to wear them, right? That's the difficult part, that this has all become 180 on us since March. But the doctors are advising and not even approving our plans, giving them their blessing and letting us put their name on the plans, which I think we need, because we're not public health experts. But when an infectious disease doctor at Butler Health System tells us you need to make kids wear them, short of a medical exception, to protect your teachers, number one, it's the right thing to do. It's ethical. But if we infect teachers accidentally by not making children wear masks, they say the research is out there. We're not public health officials. If we do that, we won't be able to stay open. We'll open, but we won't be able to stay open because we won't have staff.
I thought the research showed that there has not been a recorded case yet of a child passing the COVID-19 to an adult yet. The children that have gotten it received it from adults, not from other children. And the adults that have received from other adults, not from children. So I'm not sure where this is going.
Well, I can only tell you, I'm not an infectious disease doctor. Dr. Love has been adamant about this. Monday at 2 o'clock, you can ask the Butler County Commissioners. I can only tell you that Dr. Hellier has been adamant about this. They read all of the research. I read what I can. I don't have a medical degree. My lane, my expertise is curriculum and instruction. So all we can do is follow what they're telling us.
Thank you so much, everybody who's adding in, because there's so many things. So as Dr. Vitale said, so many things coming our way that we have something in place and then it does change and we just have to keep up with it. And the last thing we want to do is make any student feel uncomfortable or bad or awkward about anything. We just want them back. We miss them. We miss them in the regular summer. March to now, it's just too long. So we just want to keep everyone safe and do our best and follow the guidelines, regardless of how much they change. So any other questions or concerns, Mr. Hawley, that I did not get to?
I do have a
I think it's just a matter of looking at, again, understand what everybody's saying, understand there's a divide even within the medical profession on this whole issue. I think it's going to be a legal problem. Because, the whole issue that is important is whether or not you can require a healthy person something mandatorily because of the possibility of passing it to somebody else. Well, those are all issues we're never going to solve tonight. Obviously, there's a lot happening in those courts. My concern is just to make sure that we're very careful with the type of press, and I think it might even be legally tested before the start of the school year.
Bill, honestly, I look at that and think, oh, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. If it's the right thing to do, let's do it. We've got the state of Pennsylvania and these directives. If there's a test to be made, I don't know that it's necessarily going to be at our level.
Yeah, it will. With that in mind, is there any other concern anyone would like to share?
Well, I have another question or two, and as it relates to this sort of when feasible. Regina, you said that you've gone through and measured classrooms and thought through numbers. I know we've got 900 plus at least on the handout overall. I don't know how many that breaks down to in session 1 and 2 and 3. But if I know there was this letter to the governor by all the different sort of teacher rep bodies saying we want 6 feet. I mean, if the governor comes back and says, okay, it's not just 6 feet when feasible, it's 6 feet. Are we still prepared to accommodate all of our students on a full-time basis?
Well, we would be able to do it. Some students would have to be in another, when I say another location, maybe spread out into the theory and lab and have instruction be actually, how do I want to say it? Not recorded, but actually live streamed to them right out into another room. I mean, it's going to be difficult, but my teachers would do it. A teacher today told me, said, if you're okay with this, I'd like to move my theory room. I just want to bring some desks and some tables down to the lab and just spread out in front of my garage doors. And that way, with my numbers right now, I'm 6 feet apart. And I thought that's awesome. Like he said it, and I talked to another teacher, but we both want to do the same. We'll adapt because we feel that'll make it easier for us. And then we'll just fold up what we need to fold up and get working, And I said, that's terrific. I mean, they're coming up with ideas before Mr. Ryan and I have coming up with a lot of good ideas, but you put it in their hands and they're already creative. I think we could do it. It'll be different because right now, students might be through a doorway and I might have some in here. Some could hear me very clearly and see me, and some might see me on a screen, but we will do the best we can. It'll be very difficult, but we will do the best we can.
Any other questions or comments? All righty. This roll call vote will be on item 8 and item 17.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get through. I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, or if you have any concerns or comments, questions, feel free.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of specific items first. I want to make sure everybody understands that when I wear a mask covering my mouth, my nose, it's to protect you from the aerosols and the fomites that I generate when I'm speaking or coughing or sneezing. When I put on a face mask, it's to protect me from you, so that if you cough or sneeze or otherwise launch aerosols into the air, that I'm not contaminated by that. So if you watch on TV, you never see anyone with a face mask, or I'm sorry, with a face shield that doesn't also have a mask on. You're not protected with a shield, even some of the long ones that come down below your chin, because there's so much opportunity around the edges for aerosols to be inhaled. So I think we need to be very careful when we provide guidance to people about how to protect themselves. The mask is to protect you from me. The face shield is to protect me from you, but not without the accompanying mask. The other thing I heard earlier on was about gloves and having latex gloves. Latex gloves are typically flesh-colored or tan. We should never stockpile or use latex gloves. There are some people that have very severe allergies to latex. The gloves that if the VOTEC is going to stockpile gloves, they want to get nitrile gloves, the blue ones that you see more often now. And if you're working with EMS, you'll never see brown gloves. They're always blue gloves. They're made out of a nitrile material that's hypoallergenic. Regarding an issue that came up a little bit earlier, I think we have to keep remembering that we are, as Dr. Vitale alluded to, educational organizations, not medical organizations. And when Dr. Heiler was talking about what happens if somebody gets sick at school, I think the answer is really pretty simple. You either call 911 if they're really in distress, or you isolate them to the extent you can without being melodramatic. So you remove the person, make sure they have a mask on, remove them from the classroom, put them in the nurse's area, and then call the parents. It's up to the parent. This is not a critical emergency. If it is a critical emergency, it's a 911 application. If it's not a critical emergency, it's a parent's application, and it's up to parents to decide whether they want to just take that student home and have them lie down, whether they want to stop by the Med Express on the way home, whether they want to call their PCP, their family doctor. But I think the limit of our ability or need to care for someone who's ill is really limited to common sense. And I would hope that the nurses in the VOTEC in the school would agree with that.
They do. I will share with you. Thank you so much. They are very, we have a supplemental school nurse and we have a supervisory school nurse, and very decisive and very much on board and very collaborative and really just helping throughout the summer. They don't have to do this, as I said, they're volunteering time. One in particular is really going above and beyond. So it's impressive to me to see what they've come up with, and just these are the facts and here's what we're going to do. And then I also know Butler County, the rest of the Butler County school nurses are meeting and coming up with some good ideas. So there's so much collaboration. And I think, like you said, common sense should drive it all. So thank you.
The one thing I would add, Dr. Heiler, I've never seen the nurse's office, but if there's any way you can convert at least one room into a negative pressure room with outside exhaust, that will help for anyone who's symptomatic by not recirculating their aerosols, but rather sucking them out through the system into the outside air and bringing in clean, fresh air. So a negative pressure room, if there's any way we could operationalize that within the budget, would be a good idea.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The only other question is I haven't heard a lot of discussion. Before COVID-19, a lot of our discussions around school boards and districts were about safety plans regarding what has happened with school shootings and other, tragic events. And here we have plans that we're going to be having. It's difficult anyway, let alone when you're talking about school districts that have limited entrances. Can you tell me what consideration has been brought to play regarding that type of security thought, especially with VOTEC and the number of entrances and so forth that we have? So how does somebody that should not be in a building be kept from entering a building, especially when they're under mask? It's much easier to see them.
I didn't hear your last part. I apologize.
So no, what consideration or what discussions has there been with regard to that aspect of our safety plans outside of COVID-19, with the understanding that we could have somebody that means harm to the students that's coming to a building under mask or concealment? And how has that played into our security and safety?
So someone comes to the school with a mask on, they go to the main entrance where they would normally go and buzz in and say, I'm so-and-so's parent, I have to drop something off. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm talking students. So in other words,
How do you know they're a student versus?
how do we know that they are a student of VOTEC? And it's a difficult thing with the number of people who come into normal school buildings, but most school buildings have some sort of a breakdown, whether it be a metal detector or a table or a bag check or something that provides that barrier. So check by the type of animal that it is, we have a lot more opportunity for that to be taken care of. So what part of our safety plan is taking that into consideration is the idea that now we're going to have masked individuals that may be much harder to tell as one of our students, having much more opportunity to enter or cause harm to students. Has there been any discussion in that way? And if so, what has been the remedy?
Dr. Heiler, I'm going to pause you. If you did have discussions on that, I'd recommend you take this into executive session. This is student safety and it's being recorded. So I would recommend if you did have discussions, that needs to be discussed in executive session. I don't know if the solicitor agrees with me or not.
I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've had discussions. Yes, we have. We've talked about changing
Okay.
or not changing
I'd like
protocols.
I'd
Yeah,
like-
we're done. Yeah, I'm done. That's all.
Well, so I'd love to have discussion on that in executive session, whether we do it after the meeting or beforehand, whatever the rest of the board considers is appropriate.
I didn't hear you again. You're saying after this meeting or you're saying the next meeting?
I want to have that discussion, and I'll leave it up to the rest of the board whether they want to break for executive session now to have it before we vote, or whether they just want to cover it in executive session after the meeting.
I would encourage us, we could meet after this meeting is adjourned.
We can send that link out.
Do we have a consensus with that?
I'm sorry, John, I didn't hear you.
I said I was hoping for a consensus that we have the executive session after this meeting is adjourned.
I would concur with that.
Yes.
Would anybody speak against that?
Anyone else? Like to hear at least half the JOC that would agree with that.
Afterwards is fine with me. This is Heather.
Super. Anyone else?
It's fine. This is Nita.
Okay, thank you, Nina.
Miller's yes.
Okay.
After's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a majority. Thank you. So with that in mind, given our item 8 and item 17, any further discussion, questions? Okay, roll call please, Mrs. Lorenzo.
Mr. Nickel,
I think you're on mute, Jim.
Yes. Even emulating Gordon a little bit there, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Although I'm glad he turned his light on. You were looking pretty creepy there without your light on, Gordon.
Mr. Peterson,
Just a quick comment as I cast my vote. I mean, I'm in favor of the plan. I think, candidly, Dr. Heiler, and I apologize, I've been calling you Regina, but Dr. Heiler, I still think there's some I's to dot and T's to cross in this plan. There's some areas where I'm not entirely comfortable that we're ready to enact the plan. But my vote on this, because I'm in favor of the plan, is yes. I'd just like to continue to see you work on this to make sure that this is all buttoned down before the kids are in session. So my answer is yes.
Mr. Peterson,
And as with Mr. Nickel, just a comment, I think that there's two purposes for this plan. One is to meet the requirements of the state in order to proceed with opening school. The other is to affect a safe environment for school operations. To that extent, I think we meet the first requirement, and I agree with Mr. Nickel. There's some polishing to be done, so my vote is yes. Yes.
At this point, if I could interject, we had our comment section. So could we please refrain from commenting on this? If we need to reopen the comment section, we can do that. Right now, we're roll call voting. So we'd like to have a yes or no, please.
Ms. Daniels Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald,
You're on mute.
Mrs. McDonald,
It looks like her hand is raised. I will say that.
Someone needs to unmute me because I don't have even a picture on here, but
I unmuted you.
thank you. I
Thank
vote
you.
yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Hawley,
No.
Mr. Conrad,
Yes.
Mr. Marburger,
Yes.
Dr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
and Mr. Zeitz.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to, as we discussed, there will be an executive session after this meeting. But moving on to personnel, we have the substitute teacher list that's shown in Exhibit 24. We have the substitute secretaries is listed below on your agenda. We have the substitute custodians also listed on your agenda. And then we have the stipend for school safety and security coordinator as shown on the agenda. And then we also have the temporary custodian maintenance approval to hire temporary custodian maintenance. And we have a motion and a second, excuse me, to approve those items. So, Mr. Halley, and the second,
Second,
I'm sorry, who was that?
it was me. Jim.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nickel. All right, thank you. Any further discussion or questions?
I just had a question regarding the temporary custodian, how we're filling that. I mean, when we're talking to whomever is going to fill that position, they're just gonna be part-time for how long? For the year, part-time was it part-time 30 hours or is it temporary full-time for a period of time?
It is stated that way because it is at this point in 186-day a year position. And it would be considered after the fiscal year at the end of June, if this person worked out and they were someone who we feel could continue on, would end up being offered full-time with your approval. It is full-time, it's just the way it's stated, 186 days. It sounds strange, I know.
So it's.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Try before you buy.
Well, basically, in the temporary means you still have to approve him at the next meeting. Do you know what I mean? So that's pretty much what that is what that means there. So I hope that makes more sense to you, because I want to make sure that I could say, oh, this person's wonderful, we want him, but I still want you to say, okay, yeah, I agree with you, Regina. Hopefully you trust me that I'm going to get someone good. But I still want, that's what that statement's for.
I just want to make sure that but we're actually, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, we're hiring a new position. We're not just going to go to furlough this person. If we're going to come in under the labor group, we'll go.
No, there's no bargaining group in the service. So I think this is authorizing to advertise.
It's been advertised, we've already got approval to advertise. We've had one late applicant hasn't been able to be interviewed yet. The job description for this position was, you guys approved it this evening, underneath 10 job descriptions is already there outlining, but so she's asking if she finds somebody good for the next meeting, could she go ahead and hire them at $12.50 an hour and then.
But it's going to be for the full year. It's a plan, correct?
Given your approval, it's underneath.
Essentially, it's like a 1-year probation period.
Correct. Okay.
Okay.
And I appreciate you being in there, Mrs. Lamenza, because it's so hard to hear. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please, Mrs. Lamenza.
Mr. Hawley,
Yes.
Mr. Nickel,
Yes.
Mr. Zeitz,
Yes.
Dr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad,
Yes.
Ms. Daniels Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald,
Unmute me.
No, you're open. We could hear you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's
Yes.
okay. I just kept you on there.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Ms. McDonald, I didn't hear what you said.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Marburger,
Yes.
and Mr. Peterson.
And yes,
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to finance, we have the financial reports as contained in Exhibit 25. We also have the bill list as contained in Exhibit 26. May I please have a motion in a second for those items?
So moved.
Mr. Nichol and
second,
Peterson, thank you. Any questions or comments regarding those two items? Okay, roll call please, Mrs. Alenza.
Mr. Nichol,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
yes,
Mr. Marburger,
Yes.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Mr. Zeit,
Yes.
Dr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott,
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald,
Yes.
Mr. Conrad,
Yes.
and Ms. Daniels Wells.
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you. Is there any other issue that anyone would like to bring up before we close the meeting? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, may I please have a motion a second to adjourn the regular meeting? Mr. Halley and
Second.
Mr. Light. Excuse me, all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned. We will be resuming in executive session momentarily. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I assume we're just staying on and just,
I have to take this off of YouTube. I have to stop the live stream. Give me 1 second.
oh, didn't know